Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show how you can use Greeble Bake and Random Flow together again. And also if you uh, got or purchased Random Flow from the Super High bundle, there's no preset folder that comes with that. However, you can download the preset in the online documentation link. You can go ahead and go to the preset folder or page in Random Flow, and there's a link to download the presets. And that page also has the information to on how to install those presets. And if you have any question, you can just join the Discord community and go to the questions thread and then post your questions there. Okay. So we're just going to create a plane. Greeble Bake is a primarily a support tool for Random Flow, and what this does is lets you quickly bake details from a plane and then use those texture details as details or geometric details or normal details, geometric details being displacement details for your mesh. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make something symmetrical. So mirror this in the X and Y axis and just play around with some basic topology. So Random Flow works with topology. The way you lay your topology is, you lay out your topology is what affects the result of the randomization. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to use random panels, use this one, then turn on even depth. So mostly this is just setting this to off is just mostly to get rid of those geometric spiking in angular hard surface models. So if there's no geometric spiking, you can just turn it on and increase the subdivision, then increase the depth, max depth. So you need to have some thickness. With zero thickness, the baking cannot see the detail, so you need some thickness for it to actually bake these lines in order for the baking to actually show those details. And let's just play around with the maximum panel size. Panel size means that with number, one face could be the limit of the panel island, and maximum could be somewhere around 40. Let's try 30. And let's put in a bit of triangulation. So I'm just playing around with subdivision, panel size, and of course the panel seed. Okay, let's try this as a base. So if you haven't downloaded PreSelect yet, you can go ahead and download it in my Patreon. If you have Random Flow, I might actually merge it in the Random Flow purchase. So if you have Random Flow, you can expect an email some later on that says that you can download PreSelect right in your product, right in the Random Flow product in your product library. Let's select this geometry. Make sure that nothing is selected. Control Shift Control Shift A, and then you can select surface using Shift F. So hovering over a selected area is how you select it. So red means you have deselected it, and the blue means that those faces are selected. So let's try this. So we're basically layering the detail. Okay, let's try this one. Control Shift A and select another one using Control Shift F. Okay, and then going back to the plane, selecting everything, and then you can of course select everything using Control Alt Shift A. Then we're going to use cable tubes and use this as a starting point. Increase the margin, and we have the width. Sometimes for the curve, the width could sometimes means the bevel, especially for random cables. With random cables, the width is the bevel parameter. Uh, Okay, now let's play around with the seed value and increase the cuts to increase the number of tubes in there. And we're going to reduce the offset and kind of bury the curves on the panel detail. Then we just play around with the randomization. Okay, you have the bevel here. So the bevel here means the curvature on the sharp corners where the tubes turn to another direction. You can have uniform or random values for each of the corner points. So let's just try uniform value for now. Before we bake this, we're going to convert this into a mesh. Okay. Okay, let's try this one. And apply mesh. This gets rid of it as a curve and turns it into a mesh. And make sure everything is deselected. Control Shift A, and this is from the PerSelect add-on. And we have a new feature with Control Shift F. You can go to the redo panel and then toggle on delete selected. So it's easier for you to just pick stuff that you want from this selection and just delete it. So since we applied the mesh, we also apply the mirror. We don't have to actually delete this. We're just going to delete something from this side and just mirror it in the X and Y axis. So right now, I think that's the only one that I need to get rid of. So let's go ahead and select this tube again. And auto mirror, select a surface from this. Then X, Y. So now it's mirrored again. Okay, now we're going to make this. With G and press all all object that has the same type as the active selected, and in this case it is a mesh. Okay, I forgot the screencast. Sorry about that. Is it even displaying? All right. Let's go to Greeble Bake again and select everything, or select all of the mesh type objects. And let's go to image editor so we can see the images that have been generated. So what I'm going to do is generate normal AO and displacement bake. So in samples, let's just leave AO to 16 and others meaning that every other map here except AO. So for all of the other maps here, you can just use 2. It won't generate any noise using just 2 samples. With AO 16, it could be noisy depending on the type, on the um, details that actually being baked and the resolution. Let's use T048 and we're going to toggle on, so let's just use origin point and margins for bake origin is the plane. So this is our plane and the origin point is the origin point of the bake origin object. So this little orange um, dot here. And this is 0 displacement and rising up is of course the displacement. So the higher it is, the brighter the texture gets, and that determines the height of the displacement. And this is our the origin point of the big origin plane is the 0 displacement area, which is totally dark. And bake to last images. So if we need to rebake, it will just bake on the previously baked image and not generate additional textures. Let's bake images name. You can input the name here, or you can just leave it blank and the add-on will generate an automated name for it. Okay. So all we need to do is make sure everything is selected here. Every object that you need to bake is selected, and then bake. So the length of the baking process depends on the amount of geometry that is being baked, or the number of geometry being baked and their overall resolution. So this is our displacement, this is our AO, and this is our normal. Now we're going to put this into a cube. And we're just going to mirror this as well, X, Y, and Z. There we go. And let's go to the shaders and add a basic shader using Creative Flow. And probably change the HDRI, something else. There we go. Okay, now here, Control T, you have to have Node Wrangler installed or turned on. So it comes free with Blender, so you just have to download it in the extension, then enable it. So Control T, it gives you this. And we're just going to use the AO here, the base color, and actually just multiply it on a base color. So like that, multiply, it's probably somewhere around 0.6. And then they all have to share a mapping, the same mapping node. So when you affect the scale of the AO, it also affects the displacement and the normal. So this is the normal. And let's choose the normal map. So the color space for normal and displacement must be non-color. And let's go to vector. In order for the normal map to display correctly, we're going to use the normal map from here. And then we're going to use displacement and connect it here and connect this to this node here. And then in vector, I use the displacement here and set this to this. And let's put this somewhere around 0.5. We're going to start here and just adjust it afterwards. So in order for the displacement to actually display correctly, if we turn this off, so this is just the normal map. Okay, so this is just the normal map. Uh, and this is good for far away objects. You can just use normal maps for that. But for closer objects and you need more detail, for the detail to really pop out, you need the displacement detail. But with displacement, you need to have resolution. So in the modifiers, you can just add subdivision, set this to simple so we don't smooth out the sharp corners. Okay, and just increase the level of subdivision somewhere, or let's start somewhere around 6. And for the subdivision to display in the render, in the render, in the actual render and in the viewport render, let's go to settings in the material right here and set the surface to, you can use displacement only or displacement and bump. But since we already have the normal map, we can just use displacement only for this one. Okay, and let's connect this again to the displacement. There we go. So we need to adjust this. And this is our scale that actually pushes the detail depending on the color, I mean the brightness of the displacement map. Okay, so this is if you want more fidelity or the details to be more accurate, you need to increase the resolution. So the subdivision modifier has a hard cap of 6. So in order for you to get past this, you need to actually manually enter a higher value past this. So 7. So past this number, do not use the mouse press and then slide or drag. Okay, that's you might drag onto too really high value and Blender could freeze. Okay, instead use hover over the levels parameter. You can either manually set the value or use the middle mouse button. You need to press Control, then use the middle mouse button, roll up or down. So rolling this down decreases the parameter. Rolling it up increases the parameter. But with the hard cap, you need to manually enter 7 to get past this, and then you can use the mouse again. Middle mouse button, roll up and down method again. See? Oops. It's okay. So let's try with just 7. You can see that there's detail here. So with this, you can use this method to, if this object is closer to the render camera, you can use this to actually display this much detail. So this, we can actually just minimize the effect of the normal map when we're using some displacement. So something like 0.2. There we go. So it is much softer, and the shadows are also much brighter compared to 1. You can see that the valleys are very so the details are very dark. So if we use something like 0.2, you can see it goes brighter, but it shows us the kind of shows us the weakness of having, or the effect of having a really low resolution to display the displacement detail. So if you want to hide this jaggedness, you can just increase the level of the normal map, the strength of the normal map. But You of course darken the valleys of the detail. And I think we can also minimize this by just adjusting the effect of the AO as well. There we go. So this, again, if this object is rendered close, you can just use the displacement, probably play around with the normal map as well. And if this is really far away, so something like that, for example, treat this viewport as our render window. So if it's far away like that, you can just create another material for this, which has the displacement turned off, and you can just use the normal map to display the detail. But if it is closer, and if you want to the details to really pop out, and really pop out of the geometry, so you can use the displacement. You have you need to duplicate this material, so you have materials for displaying the detail far away. Use a normal map, and then another material that displays it with the displacement turned on. Okay. So just need to play around with the viewport if you want it to be really the levels of the subdivision, I mean, in the viewport or in the render. So you can play around. So um, you can find the balance uh, between resolution and how much detail fidelity that you want displayed in your model. So if you're ready to render, you need to match the render levels on the viewport levels. So 6. So if you decided on 6, for example, you need to match the render levels in that. Okay. And once you have decided on the number, then you can, of course, lower down or even turn off the subdivision, so you can work with your so you can work with the viewport. In the viewport, the viewport becomes lighter to work with once you have decided on the render value for the displacement. Then you can set it to 0. So, but if you're still deciding, you need to experiment with the viewport levels. And once you have decided, you can turn it back to 0 or 1, and just let it look like that. So you can work with other objects, and the viewport is becomes very light to work with, and that becomes and let you avoid working with a slow viewport. Okay. So right now, for this object, for example, we can just modify the shape, and you get this. So you get like a crate, and then you get like a another crate, but this with this shape. Then you can play around with the scale of the texture and the placement of the texture. The XYZ. No, the Z doesn't affect it, so just the X and Y. You can also play around with the rotation just to, of course, change the look of the detail. So let's just reset this, and let's use somewhere around 1.5 and play around with the texture to get something cool. Okay, so you get a bunch of Oops, not the Z axis. Probably not the rotation because it kind of distorts the texture. So once you have created a library of this texture detail, you can just punch it on whatever geometry that you have, simple geometry, and then create a bunch of objects from that. And you can use this on your concept art or in your renders. So, so let's just use point 2 or point 5. Let's try point 2. There we go. So you get this scraped, like straight like design. Then you can affect the shape. Let's try and select them all. Then establish the projection of the texture. There we go. Or the texture projection of the UV map. Okay. So you have this like objects stacked up together. You can build walls just stacking this objects together, or even pillars. Oops. And then create a bake to object to just bake this detail on, what is this? Let's reproject. Okay. I think it's duplicates, yeah, duplicate face. So there's a bunch of things you can do with this. And the key for this is use a really basic base mesh, and then you can just you can just drive the detail using the displacement. So let's play around with the XY placement of the texture. Okay. Uh, Again, play around with a really basic mesh. So let's try this, for example, and then reproject the texture. If it's angular, you can just use cube projection over and over again. Let's try 7, and let's fix the displacement. There we go. Let's try 7. Okay, so So you can see that I'm just playing around with the subdivision level, the displacement parameters, and the texture mapping to generate a bunch of details, a variation of the detail. So what you want to do is, of course, what I said earlier, use Greeble Bake and random flow to generate a library of this texture map details, and then you can just use it on whatever objects that you have working on. It makes it easier for you to do concept arts because you can just do details like this by just using textures. Let's choose 0.6. There we go. So let's try this on a sphere, but let's not use a sphere, but actually use a cube and just spherify. Okay, and let's drag this material here and shade smooth and put in a subdivision modifier. And since we want this curved, we're going to use Catmull and Clark and not simple. Okay, and let's affect the or change the scale effect. And then you have this. There you go. So you can, again, the most fun way you can work with this is to use really basic geometry. So if you have like a shape in mind for your concept art, you can, of course, just sketch it with basic geometry and then use texture detail to texture map details to actually generate uh, the details on that particular measure object. Okay, let's try and mirror this in the X, Y, and Z axis and see what we have. And there you go. So let's play around with the texture map. Actually, you can use the, so we need more details for this. Something like 6. Whoops, 6 probably is too much. Since the base geometry, but you can see that the detail is more is sharper. So let's use something like 3, the 4. Okay, and then what I'm going to tell you is that you can actually use the displacement as color. You can multiply it here, and then control this with the color ramp. So let's just see what it does on the mesh. Using just this, and we need to change its intensity, something like this. Okay. So just some basic coloring technique using displacement, but you don't have to actually do this. However, you can save the displacement map and use it for generating colors for the different sections of the model, either in GIMP or Photoshop. Okay, let's try 5. There we go. And render it like, for example, if it's just on side and rendered in this direction, you can decide the look from here. There we go. And you can experiment with different stuff. Let's try this. Let's try lighting it up. Emission. And then the AO. We're going to use the AO as lighting. And control it with color ramp. Let's try 5. Set this back to normal. And we're going to flip it. Flip. There we go. So it only generates from the valleys and not the peaks. And change the color. There you go. And we need to break up this color here. We can use something like we can multiply something like you can use displacement texture, or you can use like checkers or noise. Let's try checkers. So multiply and then set this to black. 3. So the only thing wrong with this is that the size is uniform. So we need to really break this up. And we can actually do that by using the noise texture. Set this to the scale. And let's see what, oh my god. Okay, probably not. You know what? There's another way. Let's use the displacement again, but creates a different mapping. So it's separate from the mapping values of this. And then we're going to use it to break this emission that is coming from the AO. There we go. And set this to something smaller. Okay, set this to, I think this is 1 by default. And set this to something like 8. Okay, let's see the effects in the light. Probably not 8, something like 5. There we go. Okay. Without the multiply and with the multiply. Let's try constant. Constant doesn't. Probably 7. There we go. But of course, you can use whatever texture that you have to break the slide apart, or spend some more time creating a procedural texture from the ones that we have here in Vanilla Blender. But in order to make this video shorter, I just used the blade displacement, and as you can see, it worked. And a good thing about this is that once you have the shader set up, you can just adjust this, and the everything will just change by itself. It's a bit slower now because of the emission. There's a very once you're using procedural shading for the emission in Blender, it kind of generates a heavy footprint, so just watch out for that. Okay, so yeah, that's how you can play around with this. Um, this is a bit heavier than what you would kind of do with just random flow using just the geometry, but this is more modular because of the way that we can change the details using the because it's just of course texture detail. So let's see what it's doing with the um, with the this one here. So let's try one. There we go. So we've managed to since this is no longer fit for this object here since we changed the parameters for this sphere. So what do we have again? 4. There we go. And play around with the location. You can even play around with the UV. Rotate it. To generate even weirder shapes. So that actually looks good. It's kind of like this is like the eye of the robot. Let's just change it back, and make it larger. Let's set it to individual origins. Okay. So yeah, you can play around with the shader, the mapping, and even the placement of the UVs to affect the look of the texture detail. Okay, so this is it for this video. And if you have purchased Random Flow through the Superhead bundle, uh, you might want to consider buying the full price because of the updates, of course. But it's up to you. And you can also grab Greeble Bake, so you can have more fun with the other. It looks good. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here, and yeah. So this is it, and be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. If you have any questions, use the comment section below and the links in the description. If you're using Random Flow, if you have any questions, go ahead and take advantage of the usage info button. Join the Discord community, or read the online documentation, or watch the YouTube videos. And also, if you have questions about the redo panels, this is the link for that, about that disappearing menu. Okay, thank you for watching and you have a nice day.